The purpose of this video is to create a working drawing for the shock assembly. This is going to serve also as the final project for this course. A working drawing is going to consist of some type of isometric view similar to this that is going to have maybe another supplemental view to show the bushings on the inside because they're not going to be visible in a view from an isometric. But it's also going to contain a parts list, balloons calling out each of the parts, and then we're also going to do detail views of the parts that we're not manufacturing. And in this case, that's the bracket, the U-support, the pivot, and the bushing. The self-locking nut, washer, hex bolt, and castle nut would all be ordered parts, so we don't need to do detailed views of those since we're not manufacturing them. The first thing that I need to do is go to File, New. And I want to do a drawing this time, and for the name of the drawing, I'm going to call this shock _ASSY for assembly _WD for working drawing. And I'll use default template and say OK. Now when this comes up, I want to make sure that I have B drawing selected because that's the one that I want to use. And I'll say OK to that. Now when this new view or this new drawing comes up, it's going to have 3 views in here by default. I don't want to use those 3 views, so I'm going to delete the front view, and it should also delete the other 2 views. So the first thing that I want to do is click General View. Select the box for Do Not Prompt for Combined State and say OK. And now it tells me down here to select the center point for the drawing view. And I'm just going to select right around here. Now that's going to bring up the Drawing View dialog box, and I know that this view is way too small. So what I want to do while I have this open is change everything that I need. So I'm just going to change this to say isometric. If your view doesn't look like this, you may have it set to trimetric. Just change this drop down right here to isometric, and this is pretty much what your view should look like. From here, I want to go to the Scale tab because I'm going to need to change the scale of this to something a little different. I want to use Custom Scale, and for this I'm going to use probably a 0.01. And I'm just going to hit Apply to see how big that is. And that's a little bit big, so I'm going to change this to 0.09 instead and apply that. That's going to suit me a little bit better. Now since I have all of the changes applied, I can just hit Cancel and it's going to leave me with my view. Now I don't want it to necessarily say Scale down here, so I can click on that and then slow right click and select Delete to get rid of that. The problem with this view is it doesn't show this bolt very well, and it doesn't show my bushings at all. So I want to do another general view, and I'm going to left click in this area to place it, and this time I want to select Front and Apply. Okay, that shows me all of the parts and pieces. So now I want to go to Scale, and I'm going to change this custom scale to say 0.005 and apply that because I need it to be a little bit bigger. Once that comes up, I can go ahead and hit Cancel again, and then again left click on Scale, slow right click, Delete. So now I've got my isometric view, and then I've got one supplemental view right here just to show these 2 bushings because that's all I really created this view for. The next thing I need to do is create my bill of material, and I'm going to create that up here. This is going to be the most complicated part of this entire video. So we're at about 3 minutes and 50 seconds. You may want to write that time down. That way, if you're having problems doing this, you can always refer back to this part. So, I need to click on the Table tab, and I want to do a 2x3 or 3x2 table because I'm going to do item, quantity, and name. So once I select that, I can drop that table in right here. Now that I have that in, you're going to see me left clicking down here a lot. That's to deselect whatever is selected. So now I'm going to double click in this field, and I'm going to type item. Then I'm going to double click in this field, and I'm going to type QTY. Then I'll double click in this field. May have to double click a couple times to get it to go over there. And then I'm going to type name. And then I'm going to double click out of there. Now I'm going to left click in this field, not double click, just single left click and then right click, or slow right click, and go to height and width. I want 0.75 for this field, so I'll say OK to that. Left click down here to clear it again. Left click on this cell, slow right click, height and width. I want 0.75 for this one as well. Click down here to get out of that. Now, when I click on this cell, I can actually come up here and click height and width rather than slow right click also. My width for this one, I want 3.5, and I'll say OK to that. So now I've got all of my columns in here that I want to have in here. To get this list of material to automatically populate, I've got to set up something called a repeat region. Now, pay very, very close attention when I do this. I click repeat region and then add. Now I need to left click in the left edge of the first cell. And then it wants me to pick another table cell, so I'm going to left click in the middle of the far right cell. And then I'm going to pick the right edge, almost to the right edge of the far right cell. And then I can say done. Now because I did that, I just created what's called a repeat region. So now when I double click in here, it's going to ask me for an attribute to select. So I'm going to double click here, and in this case I want to go to ASM, member, and I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to double click in this cell, and I want to go to report index. What that's going to do is that's going to report the number. So this will be piece number 1, number 2, number 3, or however it numbers it. For the quantity, I want to double click in here, and I want to go to report quantity. And then for the name, I'm going to double click in here, go to ASM member name. So now that I've got those 3 filled out, I'm going to click on update tables. What that does is that numbers everything and brings in the name of everything. Notice all the quantities are blank and it lists the bushing twice. Well, I don't want it to list the bushing twice, so what I need to do is I need to edit the attributes of this repeat region. So I'm going to click on repeat region, click on attributes, and then select that repeat region and select no duplicates. I can then say done, and it's going to combine everything and make it look all nice and neat. So it's giving me my items, my quantities, and my names. If your item numbers are different than my item numbers, don't worry about it. This is all based on the order in which they were brought into the actual part file. It has nothing to do with anything else, so however these come in is going to be perfectly fine. I'm going to select done to say that I'm done editing my repeat region. And now I want to create balloons. When I go to create balloons, I'm just going to say all. And what that's going to do is it's going to put all the balloons in this part. Now most of these balloons are not in a place where they're even recognizable. So at this point I want to modify the balloon placement. So balloon number 1 is the bracket, which is the main piece down here. So I'm just going to left click on that and then hover over the numbers until it gives me the arrows. And then I'm going to left click and drag that up to around here. Then I'm going to slow right click over top of it and say edit attachment. And I want it to attach it right there. Once I have that done, I can just middle click to accept that change. And then I can move on. The bushings are part 2. It's not even visible in this view, so I'm going to left click on it, and I'm going to move it all the way over to here, slow right click, edit attachment, and then I may have to zoom in a little bit to select right there. And then I'm going to middle click to say that I'm done with that. For part number 3, which is the castle nut, it's over here and it's kind of in the right place, but it looks like it's pointing at the bolt. So I'm going to left click on it, I'm going to kind of move it up here a little bit, slow right click, edit attachment, and then I'm going to pick on one of the lines of the castle nut to make it a little bit clearer. So that's part 3. For part 4, which is the hex bolt, it is visible, but only this part of it is visible out here. So I'm going to left click on it and I'm going to move it over to here, slow right click, edit attachment, and I'm going to click right here. Middle click to say that I'm done with that. Sometimes it leaves behind a ghost image, and white, if you just pan around a little bit, that'll disappear. So now I'm at the pivot, which is part number 5. And that's not even on my screen, so what I'm going to do is left click that. I want to move it, slow right click, edit the attachment, and select right here. Middle click to say that I'm done. Part number 6 is the self-locking nut, which is on the bottom. Part number 8 is the washer, which is even further hidden by this view. So I want to make sure that I get everything in the right places. So for my self-locking nut, I'm going to left click on here, move this over, slow right click, edit attachment, select right here. For the U support, which is this piece right here, I'm going to, well, first of all, middle click to say that I'm done with the previous one. I'm going to move this down to here, slow right click, edit attachment, and I'm going to select right here. For the washer, which is part number 8, I'm going to left click on that and I'm going to drag it over to here, slow right click, edit attachment, and I'm going to pick on the edge of the washer. So now I've got my view that has all of my parts called out, all the parts are visible and I can clearly see everything, plus I have my item numbers and my quantities. At this point, I'm ready to start doing my detail views for each of the parts and pieces. And the detail views are going to be basically mirrored from what you see in the figures in the book. So on page 11-32, what we're actually doing is recreating 11-46, 11-47, 11-48, and then on page 11-33, we're recreating view 11-49, except we are not going to be doing a section view of it, we're just going to be doing a solid view. So at this point, I've got everything on this sheet that I need from this sheet. So I'm going to click back over to Layout, and then I'm going to click New Sheet. So now I'm on sheet 2. This is going to be a little bit different because now I need to do something different, because if I just hit General View, it's going to want to use my assembly again. So I'm going to click on Drawing Models, and I'm going to add a model, because the only model that's loaded right now is the assembly. So when I click Add Model, it's going to ask me which one I want to add. And I'm going to select Bracket and Open. Then I'm going to click Set Model, Bracket, and then Done. What this does now is this means everything that I'm about to do is going to be using the bracket model. So now when I go to General View and I left click to place it, it's going to come in with that bracket. I want to use the front view, so I'll hit Apply to that. For my view display, I want it to be hidden, and I'll say Apply to that. That way we've got our hidden lines and we've got our regular lines. And the scale, I can go ahead and leave at the 0.04 because I want to try to get all of my views on this sheet. Since it is a B size, it should work out okay. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and hit Cancel because I've already got this in now. And what I want to do is uncheck the box up here that says Lock View Movement and move this down, because this is my front view, and for this particular part I'm only going to be doing a front view and a top view. So now I can do a projection view of that, and this is going to come in shaded, but I want it to be hidden just like the other one. So I'm going to double click on it and go to View Display, Hidden, and I'll say Apply to that. Now one thing that this is doing is it's showing tangential lines. So here where it says Tangent Edges Display Style, I want to say None and apply that. What that's going to do is it's going to take out all of the extra lines in this view, and it's going to show me only those parts that are actually necessary. So I can go ahead and cancel that. Now I'm going to zoom in on these views, and there's some things that I'm going to do to make my life a little bit easier. With this particular software, there's a lot that you can do based on the geometry that you use to create the part. So I'm going to go over to the Annotate tab, which has all of my information, and I'm going to left click on this view, and go to Show Model Annotations. Now what this brings up is this brings up all of the dimensions that are used in the creation of this view. And I need to go in here and select only those dimensions that I actually want to use for this. So I want to use the 300, I want to use the diameter of 50, I want to use the diameter of 710. And I'm just looking at the book and seeing which dimensions that they used in the top view. So it would appear that the diameter of 75 is used, the diameter of 225 is used, and the diameter of 175 is used. The RF20, we're going to label that differently. The RF50, we're going to label that differently. So that's pretty much all of the view, or all the dimensions that are used in this view that I actually want to use. But now I want to go over to Show the Model Datums. And I'll click on this, and it's going to show me all of the center lines in this view. So I want to click on this center line, I want to click on this center line, and I want to click on this center line, and then say Apply, and then Cancel. Now I've got all of the information that was used in the first model, or in the top view in the book on this particular view. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to just rearrange this stuff so that it's almost set up the same way again as it was in the book, because I know that that configuration is going to work. So here I'm just going and moving stuff around a little bit. And there's one dimension that didn't really come in. And this 50 typical, it's called out on here on the other one, and there's a 120 dimension here. But I'm going to go ahead and just leave this one right here, and I'll put that 120 over here. So everything else looks okay, but now I need to add some information to this. So diameter 50 typical, I want to double click this, and I want to add TYP in parentheses, and that did not come in for some reason. So I'm going to slow right click it instead and go to Properties. And this is going to give me all of the information about this. It's got my nominal value, my display, it's got all of the information. So what I want to do now is just go to Display, and for the suffix on this one I'm going to type in the TYP and say OK. So now that's a typical dimension. It applies to all the dimensions on here for the small holes. So the other thing that I need to do is I need to add the dimension of 150 and the dimension of 210 or 120 in here. So I'm going to go to Dimension. I want to select from here to here. From here to my center point. And for some reason this is acting crazy right now. So again, I'm going to click Dimension. I want to base this dimension off of this edge, so I'll left click this edge. Then I'm going to hold Control and select the circle, and that's going to allow me to place the 120 dimension. And I middle click just like I do in the part files to place that dimension. Now I'm going to click the top edge, hold Control, and select the bottom edge, and that's going to allow me to place the 150. And my extension lines are pretty long, so I just want to move this out here far enough that it doesn't interfere. So that's all the dimensions that we have on here. Now, just for the purposes of illustration, I'm going to delete this 175 because I want to show you what happens when you place a dimension. If I place a dimension by clicking on here and then middle clicking, it's going to give me a radius of 112.5. If I click this little drop down, I can change that to diameter. But by default, it's always going to want to put it in as a radius. So use the drop down to your advantage and it'll work out a whole lot better. So next I can move down to this view here. So I'm going to click on this view. and go to Show Model Annotations. Now, in this case, since I was on the Datums tab last, it's going to come up with the datums, so I can click here, here, and here, and then go over to my Dimensions tab, and now it's bringing up all the dimensions again. Well, in this case, I want the 950, the 375, I want the 30 here, I want the 238 here. I'm not going to mess with the other 30 dimension that's right here, or right here. The 175, don't need it because that's the hole from up top. This radius over here is calling out an external radius instead of the internal radius, so I'm going to leave that alone. There is another radius call out over here, and then a 140, which is the height of the boss in the middle, and I do want that 140. So I'm going to have to move around a little bit to try to get it to select the 140. And then I'm going to say apply and then cancel. So now I've got some stuff to move around. So I want to move this 950 down. I want to move this 375 down. This 30 that's on here, that's typical all the way around, so that's good. I've got my 238 over here. I've got my 140 here, my 375. So I've got pretty much everything that I need. So I can now go to Dimension, and I'm going to click here and place the R50, which I'm then going to go in and change the prefix on. So I'm going to slow right click and go to, well, left click on it, then slow right click, and then I will go to Properties. Under Display, my suffix again is going to be parentheses TYP. Got to make sure that I use the parentheses. And I'll say OK to that. And then I can get back out of there. Back to Annotate, Dimension, grab my inside radius and locate it. Sometimes you've got to zoom in to get the radiuses if they're small or they're being obscured by anything else. So by zooming in, I can get them a lot easier. So I'll middle click to place this one, and then I'll cancel out of that command, left click, slow right click, go back to Properties, Display, and under my suffix, I'm going to do Typical again, and OK. So now I've got my top and my front view done for this particular object. But I do want to call it out as a bracket in some way, so there's a couple ways I can do it. If I double click this view and I go in here to the view name, I can call this the bracket, and then I can change it so that it's visible. But what I want to do is, just to distinguish this from everything else, I want to create a note. And it says select a free point on the drawing, so I'm just going to click right down here and I'm going to type in bracket. And I can change the size of this. If I want to change the size, I can do what I want, but at this point I'm just going to move it so that it's a little bit centered underneath the actual part. So there I've got my detail view for my bracket. So now I can come over here and do my pivot. So I'm going to go back to Layout, Drawing Models, Add Model, Pivot, Open, Set Model, Pivot, Done. General View, I'm going to left click over here. I want a front view. I'll apply that. Under View Display, I want it hidden. I'll apply that. Everything looks good for that view, so I can go ahead and cancel. Then I'm going to do a projection view right above it, double click it, go to View Display, Hidden, apply that, and again it's bringing up those tangential edges, and I want to avoid tangential edges. So I'm going to go in here to Tangent Edge Display, None, and apply that, and then I can go ahead and cancel that. Now that I've got these two views in place, I'm going to just move this one down a little bit. If you can't move it, you got to uncheck lock view movement over here. And then same as I did before, I'm going to left click on this view, go to my annotate tab and click show model annotations. I want my 650, 500, 62.5, 125, and my 250, and I'll call out everything else later. Click on, I'm going to click apply before I go to the next step. Click on my datums, and I want all of these to show up, so we'll go ahead and click on all of my axes in this particular case. Apply that and then go ahead and cancel out. Now all I got to do is move these around so that they're legible. Move that away a little bit. And now I need to put in that 4 by diameter 25 for this hole, or whichever hole that I choose to do this on. So I'm going to go to dimension. I'm going to select the circle. I'm going to place it. Click on my drop down and say diameter. And then I'm going to left click on it and then slow right click and go to properties. So under display in this case, the prefix is already diameter, but I want to change this and put a 4x space and OK. So that way it says 4 by diameter 25. Now that's all the dimensions that are used in this top view except for the 75. The 75 is going to be probably best put in over here. So I'll go back to dimension, select my outside edge, hit control, select my circle, and then just put in this 75 dimension over here. And that's all the dimensions that I need for that particular view. Moving down to the front view, again, click on the view, show model annotations. I want all 3 of these center lines. I'll apply that and then go to the dimensions. The dimensions in this case are going to be a little different. I want the 32 here, I want the 132, the R106, the diameter 150, the R of 50, the 75 and the 25. Those are not going to apply to this view. So I want to go ahead and say apply and cancel. Now I can move this stuff around so that it is legible. I'm going to bring this off of this side because it's going to look a little bit better. We're going to move this down. I'm going to move this to up here. And that's a lot better as far as the dimensioning is concerned. So at this point I've got 2 of my views in place as far as the detail drawing is concerned. The next step would be to create the drawing for my U support and then the bushing. So what I would like you guys to do is do the U support in this area, the bushing in this area. Just make sure that you have all the same dimensions that are in the book, and you should be good to go for everything. Now, rather than doing those next 2 and dragging this video out to be an hour long, I want to cover the next steps in how to actually save this, how to switch between your different sheets, how to get all the information that you're looking for. So right now we're on sheet 2. If I click right here, I can go to sheet 1. I am going to save this just because I don't want to lose any of the stuff that I've got so far. So I can go back and forth from sheet 1 to sheet 2. If I wanted to create a PDF of this file, I could go to review. Okay, they moved the export functionality of this. So if I go to file, I can print this, I can do a save as, and under save as there is a quick export PDF. And if I click on this, it's going to create a PDF file in the same folder that all the rest of my files are in. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes to create the PDF, but I do want you guys to create a PDF of your file. So it's now created the PDF, and if I bring this over into here, you can see here's my first sheet. Click on it, here's my second sheet. What it showed as gray lines earlier, it now shows as actual hidden lines. So you don't have to worry about the fact that they're not actually dashed. But that PDF file, if I look, it's already been saved. So, and it should be saved in the same folder that everything else is in. So if we look over here now, it doesn't look like it saved my PDF file in that folder. So I'm not 100% sure where it's set up to save, but I know it's in there somewhere. So when this comes up, I can just go ahead and do a save as, and then, okay, it put it in a local temp file, so you may want to change that so that it goes into the folder where everything else is saved. And then at this point, you can create your zip file and submit everything. Now, if you haven't done this before, I'm going to show you. I'm going to minimize everything that I've got open here. And here is my folder for the shock assembly. So to create, if I look in this folder, it's got everything. It's got all of my parts, my PDF, my assembly files. It's got everything that I could possibly need in that folder. If I simply right click on this and go to send to compressed folder, it automatically creates a zip file with the same name in the same location as this folder. So if I double click on the zip file, it shows me shock assembly, which is this folder, and then has everything underneath it. So the last thing that you're going to want to do before you submit this is you're going to want to create that zip file and then submit the zip file. And again, this is going to count as the final project. This is kind of accumulation of everything that you've done so far, and then the last step of actually creating the drawing.